For Rinnai, we've had this out about 2 years now, and just had phenomenal success with this combination. If you take a look at that, how many guys have put in sensitive water heaters? Do they look familiar? Yeah, we actually took the idea from them and made our own boiler. So this is pretty neat stuff here. They've really done a lot of research and done a lot of testing in the field. So you guys are not the guinea pigs. All right. Oops. So we're going to talk a little bit about Rinnai. We're going to talk about the benefits of the I-Series. We have come up with some great ideas. We've actually incorporated some of the ideas from the competitor and put it into ours. That's one thing that they did a real good job of. We're going to talk about some of the installation, some of the maintenance things. That's what's really cool about this thing. You know, most high efficiency equipment, it's pretty complicated. We got to go through a lot of steps. We got to do combustion analysis. We got to do, you know, change flame rods. This one, probably not a lot. No O2 settings, no CO settings. Everything's pretty much self-adjusting inside of this unit. So we don't have to worry about that. Maybe a flame rod once in a while, you know, if you get some dirty propane, something like that. Of course, we're going to talk about the benefits of modulating boilers. I mentioned everybody here knows that, right? We understand how that works and why we do that. So if we look at this, and this is in your packets, so it's just a little hard to read, but this kind of gives you an idea of what the new I-Series boiler is, some of the things that we identify in here, and we're going to get into this a little bit deeper a little bit later. But that's in the handouts for you. We've also included a $150 rebate that started July 1st. So not yet, so hopefully nobody's bought one maybe. But July 1st, we will start issuing a $150 rebate to the installing contractor. Now that has to be with the boiler and the low loss header. So it's a combination. A little bit about Rinnai, founded in 1920, we're in 16 different countries. We are the world's largest manufacturer of tankless water heating products. So here in the US, we hold about 46% of market share. So pretty good. We've got 600 R&D engineers now. They're not on all of the US. There's a lot in Japan, but we have quite a few here in the US. And we do live product testing. So every one of these units that leaves the factory is full of water and is run through a cycle. So we typically would not see any problems with what we call DOAs out there in the field. If it's a DOA, there's something else going on. Oops. Where did he go? See if I can go back. Yeah, there we go. We actually are producing, let's go back again. We actually are producing the non-condensing water heaters here in the US. We're actually building them, building parts for them. So we are going on with that, and it's a pretty big thing. Now we also are going to do a new facility, a 300,000 square foot facility. So all of our tankless, and haven't had this confirmed yet, but I don't see why not, boilers will be made here in the US, manufactured and assembled here in the US. So that sounds pretty good because it's a US product. The big thing is, now we're not gonna have to put up with this nonsense we got going on with transfers, you know, with getting it across the ocean. So that's a big thing. Right now, you know, Northwest Pipe's experiencing, what, 20 weeks for a new order?
So the parts, components going to be manufactured here too?
Yep. There's a few things we're not going to do, some of the electronics possibly, but heat exchangers, you know, all the major components. Which, you know, we do out-of-house stainless steel heat exchanger, secondary heat exchanger, brace plate, and the pumps, red faucet. So some of that stuff is sourced locally. So, but again, within the US. So what's the biggest complaint you get from your customer about your heating system? It pretty much encompasses all these: comfort, efficiency, space requirements, versatility, and that's what this is going to give you. no floor space taken up, 90% efficient, 90+% efficient, and it'll give you comfort because it modulates. We actually have outdoor reset that's capable in this unit. Not that you gotta use it, a lot of people don't like it, but if you do use it, it's a very good thing for comfort, especially when you get the in-floor heat scenario. So modulating technology, we all understand that, standard gas valve on and off, we get these peaks and valleys. We get a pretty good swing on those things. But when we do modulating, you can see at that point, we narrow that band down. So we don't have that overshoot and undershoot all the time that you see in a single fire unit. So it helps it just a lot more comfortable, and in this scenario, it uses a lot less gas. So you gotta remember, a lot of times you're gonna be fired, minimum fire rate 15,000 BTUs instead of the 120,000 BTUs that fire had to deliver. So it modulates, so it'll maintain that and it's a much more comfortable temperature. The run times may be a little bit longer, but your comfort level is much higher. Why wall-hung boilers? Well, we have seen a huge increase in the amount of wall-hung boilers sold in the US. So you can see right now, our growth rate from 18 to 21 has been 24%, where standard boilers has only been about 4%. So you're gonna see these a lot more in the industry coming out. I'm sure that just about every manufacturer has a wall-hung boiler. It's just that how do they approach it? What do they do? How are we going to be able to accomplish the things that we need to do with that? So the features, oops, too far, is of course 95 and 96% efficiency. We can do simultaneous heating and cooling, or just heating and cooling. I'm in my mini split days. We can do simultaneous domestic water or central heat. We can make the domestic water priority if we want to, or we can do either one. We give you the option to choose which function you want to have. So we can either go both of them, just domestic water, and make that a priority. So it depends on how you want to do it. Precision domestic hot water. Here's a big thing that we did. So we took the technology behind the sensing, where we have the mixing valve that mixes that water down so we don't overshoot temperatures. So now we can guarantee you plus or minus 2 degrees on that domestic water. So that's built into this thing. So you don't have to have a flow control valve. You don't have to have a mixing valve. It's all built right into this. Now there are some applications where a mixing valve may be required. Some places, engineers will specify that. That they have to have that. So that's a possibility. But again, we're guaranteeing you plus or minus 2 degrees, period. So domestic recirc, we actually be able to tie this in domestic recirc. We actually have a second set of contacts in here for a second pump that will turn on a recirc loop. And we can program that into the board. So that's one of the things that they've done. 2-zone, and that's right, we can either do recirc or we can do a 2-zone system with this. It's got all set up in here for T1, T2. So it's already going. It's got pumps connection points for pump 1, pump 2. Pump 2 can be used either for recirc or for a second zone. Multi-venting situations. This is where we really shine because we've got about 9 different manufacturers that we approve. And of course, 99% of them are going to be what? PVC, exactly. So, for years we've bitched at you, don't use PVC, don't use PVC. Well, the problem with PVC, it has a threshold. What's that temperature? What's the maximum temperature you can run PVC at?
Is it 180?
No.
140.
158 is the actual threshold where it starts to break down. So what we do is we actually have the thermistor built into the discharge up here. So, because if you're doing a boiler and you're doing 185 degrees, that step temperature is going to get a lot warmer than that. So we actually have this in here as a protection. So we can probably duty cycle the burner if we wanted to, or if we're going to use a different bedding, like stainless or poly, then we can bypass that so it doesn't cycle. So we have that built into the unit. We can either do stainless, poly, or we can do PVC. Or we also I can't pull it off, I didn't take the screw off, but we can do the concentric. Remember the concentric where we have the pipe within the pipe? We can still do that with this. So if you got an up and out, you don't want to mess with PVC glue, we can do that with a concentric. And it's a polyliner, polyester. So it's a lot easier to put together than that aluminum stuff that we still sell. Proceed serviceability. Typically, I'm going to say typically because there are going to be challenges, but there's really no component in here that we can't change out in less than 10 minutes, other than the heat exchanger. That's about 15. But you can see everything's put together with speed clips. So here's a speed clip here, you pull that off, and boom, that's ready to come apart rather than have to take apart a union, take apart any plastic fittings, any of that kind of stuff. So we have just made it so much easier to access the pump. Same thing, speed clips there, boom, it comes out. It's just a lot more serviceability for you guys.
Are all the speed clips the same size?
No.
So you still got to keep track of where you're pulling them from.
Well, you do, but they're really not that different. I mean, you're going to be able to tell which one goes where because there's a big difference between the one on the pump and the one here. So I mean, you got to have to be a little bit organized. Oops, dang it. I got a new controller, and my wife thought it was really cool because it had a green sensor on it, but it's become a pain in the ass. So, let me go back here. There's the sizes. Combi's up to 120. The thing that I really want to point out here is the fact that here's your GPM flow rate. This doesn't work good on the screen either. The GPM flow rate, 4.1 at a 7-degree rise. On our 60s and our 90s. And then on the 120, 5.2 gallons a minute. That's the same thing as the sensei. Now, how do we do that? If this is only 120,000, how are we going to get 5.2 gallons a minute out of that? It's because we could dual fire this thing. Because of this burner setup in here, I can actually fire this on domestic water site at 199,000 BTUs. That's how we get the 5.2. So that's a big thing. Solo boarders, we go up to a 150. And you can look at there, if you look at the turn down ratios, 10 to 1, 8 to 1, that's pretty phenomenal. So what is a turn down ratio, 10 to 1? Basically, you're just going to take your max divided by your minimum BTUs. That'll give you a turn down ratio. Just think it as gears on like on 10-speed bike. If you got a real tough going, you're going to gear up. We're going to be able to ramp up. You got a nice, easy horizontal flat, then we're going to, go to that minimum BTUs at 15,000 BTUs. Oh, man. Okay, how did we do this? Well, in the past, in the senseis, we do have stainless steel heat exchangers. So what we've done a little bit different here is we've used a different stainless. It's a 409 stainless. Here you can see the picture of it. And that's the secondary or primary heat exchanger up here. The secondary heat exchanger is a brazed plate heat exchanger. So it is a very robust heat exchanger. That's where you get all your condensate. That's where you get your initial water flow. So as you can see, our tubing is a little bit thicker than the competition, and we use a flat plate heat exchanger. That's huge. Flathead heat exchangers are very forgiving as far as thermal shock, any of the other things that we run into on the standard heat exchanger. And as you can see, as the water enters, we heat that up with the flue gas. That's the second pass of the flue gas. We're going to heat that up. We're going to send that to the primary heat exchanger, and then that will be superheated to the temperature that we want. So again, 120, 140. We're guaranteeing that temperature. So if we look at the components on the inside, how do we do this? Well, one of the things that we do, and it should pop out here in a minute, we'll show you that we have a zero governor valve. Zero governor meaning as the pressure, negative pressure from the fan ramps up, so does that valve. So we actually track that pressure. So as we need more heat, that governor will open up and that valve will open up along with it. That's that switchable vent here. Here we go. This shows you a picture of it. So as we look at that, this is with the whole fan set up here. We've got the zero governor gas valve, which is the one on the right. And that's basically an open closed gas valve. That's all it is. Nothing real special about it. That's our turbo fan that allows us to use PVC pipe or any venting material we can. And then, of course, the second thing is the FAC convertible. This thing is convertible in the field. It comes with a conversion kit from natural to LP. It's 3 screws, a parameter setting on the board, and you're done. No setting gas pressures, no adjusting high fire, low fire. Bingo, you're done. That's it. But the LP kit will come with the boilers.
Are the sensates gonna start coming with LP?
No.
Okay.
And I don't get it, but that's the Japanese policies that they run with. So, no, they are not. Not at this point. We are pushing. I said, well, if it comes with this, why doesn't it come with the sensor? You know, I mean, that's a $5 part. Why? So, anyway, and as you can see, as we bring our air in, as that increases, we also bring in more gas than we do in there, and we get into a mixed burner. So in other words, our gas and our air is mixed before it gets to the burner phase, which gives us a lot better burner. The burn across that is across the whole top of that. It's like a, you know what an infrared, high intensity infrared looks like? You know those red things that hang from ceilings? I think Home Depot's got them. That's what that is. It's an infrared burner. And we burn the whole entire burner assembly. Rather than just parts of it, like in the old days, now we burn the whole face of it, so we get an even heat across the whole entire heat exchanger. Again, 2 zones. We can do 2 thermostats. If we get multiple systems, then we can go in there with a Techmark. I'm assuming, is that what you guys use?
For what?
For multi-zone.
No, I'm just using the Takeo switching relay.
Takeo, okay. Takeo switching relay.
Fancier ones, yeah, we're using the Techmark.
Techmark, okay. Yeah, so we can do anything that we want. We just gotta have a set of dry contacts to T1, T2. That's it. So you can have like 10 zones if you want. We don't care. So,
But this comes built to do 2 zones.
comes built to do 2 zones. It's set up to do 2 zones at this point. 1 zone in recirc or 2 zones. However you want to set it up. But it has pump contacts in here for that. So domestic on the combi or the solo, we can do priority or we can do simultaneous central heating and domestic water. So however you want to set it up, we don't care. You can do it either way, of course. The most logical way would be to do it simultaneously, do it together.
At any point when you do the simultaneous, if your demand on the DHW, does it just takes over that, right?
The DHW
Sends you a little bit of heat if you still have heat
We'll do
on.
that, yes. We won't shut off the central heating like a lot of the competition does. We will actually cut that central heating back and allow the domestic water to come up more. Because again, remember, on like say the 120, we're finding at 199,000 BTUs. So if we cut that back a little bit on the central heating side, it's not gonna be much. So, and with you as a concern on in-floor heat, if we're gonna overshoot that temperature, no, we'll actually limit that BTU capacity going out to that central heating system. So we will modulate that back and forth. And again, because of our design on the domestic water side, no mixing valves and no flow control valves. So that's something you don't have to worry about. Now, you do have to worry about these come as you see them here, and you want to put a service valve kit in, that's a separate item. And of course, the low loss header is another item. So those are the 2 things that you will have to field supply.
So that low loss header doesn't have an isolation valve on it?
Yeah.
But it doesn't have a 3-way valve. I haven't seen them yet.
3-way valve for what?
Cleaning?
Oh, clean, yeah, it's still got all the same thing as you would see in a standard kit. It'll have your service valve, what you might call a 3-way valve, and then your shut-off valve. Yes.
So why are you saying we need to purchase a separate?
Because for the domestic water side. The domestic water side has its own connection point.
I got you. Okay.
So
I'm
that's,
with you now.
yeah, and that will come with the same setup. is what you see. Not the Sensei setup, it's the standard old one that had the relief valve built into the hot water. So you'll have a separate setup for that one. So again, here's our temperatures, and we can figure at 70 degrees, 5.1. You know, I think that's going to be pretty close here. There's going to be some situations like you get into some places like Lewistown, you know, 38 degree water. You know, so we may have to lose that GPM a little bit, but it's all based on BTUs and GPM flow rate. And again, we can modulate that. So if we're going to overshoot that, so in other words, we're not getting our 120 degree water coming out on the domestic side, then we will throttle that incoming water down so we can maintain, we guarantee temperature and not flow. So if you get somebody in a house that's got a Roman tub and they turn it on and go, oh God, you know, it's slow. Well, yeah, but I can give you 120 degree water, 365, 24/7. So.
What is the max temp we can set that to DHW?
140 on domestic, 140. That's it. So. Oops, hey. So anyway, we just talked about a little bit about this. Of course, the big thing right now is recirc logic. Everybody wants that. Everybody wants to have, you know, what they call instant hot water. They want to have water at that hot water fixture when they possibly can. And we're capable of doing that. If we're going to do a single zone system, we can control it right out of here. Very simple to do. It's all the logic is built into the board. It's very easy to incorporate that into it. If you're going to do a multi-zone and the recirc, then that's going to require a separate take-home switching. So, and we also take in the capability of doing the thermal bypass. So if you don't want to do a dedicated return and you want to use one of those Grundfos bypass valves, certainly can do that, because we can tell the board that that is a crossover system and that pump will react to that. A little bit more head, a little bit different parameter of operation. So either dedicated return or we can do that what we call bypass.
Is that just on off, or can you have it timed?
Okay, it's like just like the Sensei. So what we can do is right now it's going to either be economy or comfort. So economy means that it will cycle every 30 minutes. It will look at that temperature, and if it's 15 degrees below set point, it'll bring on the unit. If it's 15 degrees, if it's above it, then it won't bring on. It'll just go through that. Wait another 30 minutes. The comfort is every 15. Now, problem is, do I want this thing to run 24/7 like that? No, we really don't. We want you to put some kind of timer on. And we've got the capability of putting that timer right into the system. So it'll be an external timer. So if you want to turn it on at 6 in the morning, shut it off at 10 in the morning, and then bring it on at 5 at night until 10 o'clock, we have capable of adding an external timer to this to accomplish that.
That's a Rinnai timer that we add into it?
It's somebody else's, it's Intermatic, but we get it from Rinnai. It's a separate component. Just a 24-volt timer, that's all it is, a set of switches. Simple. Nothing to do with the pump, nothing to do with anything else.
So it just closes the dry contact?
Yep, just call the dry contact, yep. I apologize for this, and I think this will be the last class I use it on. Okay, so here's our controller. Controller's going to be a little bit different because it has a lot more functionality to it than the standard Sensei. If we want to add a domestic hot water controller, so in other words, have one in the bathroom, so we can adjust that temperature from this thing, we have the capability of doing that. We can add this on. And you see that controller there, this one here, that's what's going to come with all the new Rinnais. That's our new controller. You'll see that coming out probably whenever they come across in the big pond. I don't know. I haven't seen them yet, but they are coming out. And we can control up to 3 of those remotes. So if you have one in the kitchen, one in the bathroom, one in the laundry room, however you want to do that, we can do that. And it reports back to us.
Are those now wireless?
No, they're still wired.
Still wired.
Still wired. It's low voltage. It is 12 volts DC, so it's just standard 18 gauge. 350 feet total, so. Very seldom do we see anybody do that, but there are some guys out there that like all the buttons and bells and whistles. So if we look at the controller itself, we actually simplified it as much as we can. We try to get everything on the face of this so that anything that we need to do is done right on the face of the controller. We have a mode button which switches in between, your service, your parameter settings, your troubleshooting. That's just a matter of how you access that. The economy feature, we'll talk a little bit about that. I don't know. It's a duty cycle on the burner, basically what it amounts to. So I haven't seen much activity with that. And then of course you've got your central heating switch, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. This display just shows you the difference between central heating and domestic hot water. The other one with a little faucet on it, that turns your domestic on and off. And then when you see the LED lit, that's when it's activated. And then of course there's your change buttons up and lower. It's pretty simple, straightforward. And then of course there's an enter button at the top. So when you make a parameter change or you make a mode change, you use that enter button at the top to make that happen. These are in those handouts I handed out too. So a lot of this information is already in there. So it's in every manual, but I just wanted to make sure you guys had it. So it's in that piece that I handed out. So if we look at the face of the controller, when it actually displays, here's what you're going to see. When it's in the service mode, so in other words, you're doing the parameter setting or everything, it shows you that's the mode you're in. It's going to show a little wrench and screwdriver. When the economy's activated, you'll see a little economy light come on. When it's in use, you'll see a little flame. And then you're going to see if multi-controllers are used, which is the primary. So it's just like the old days when we had the multiple units, whichever one's primary, that's the one that takes control. So the little radiator up there, that's when central heating is activated. And of course, that's your temperature for either domestic or central, and also give you temperature and pressure. Pressure inside the boiler, because the boiler, when you closed loop system, we got to make sure that we've got decent pressure in order for this thing to fire correctly.
So in indirect solo models, is that a aquastat or sensor we plug into this unit? Will it work off of a sensor?
For a separate tank?
Yeah, for an indirect.
Indirect
solo
tank.
models.
Yep, we can either do a 10K or we can do a aquastat, whatever you want to do.
So there's two different terminals on here?
No,
Oh, really?
no, there's one terminal, we just tell it what it's going to do.
Oh, okay.
On the parameter set.
Okay.
We use tri-set of contacts, we use the resistance.
Okay.
Whichever two we do. And of course, we can do all the Canadian required components, which is either Celsius or Fahrenheit or PSI and bars. So we do have that capability, somebody really gets into that. Warranty on the primary heat exchanger is 12 years on residential, 5 commercial. Parts is 5 years, which is new to us, that just came out. And then of course, 1 year on a reasonable labor rate.
What's reasonable?
What's your labor rate?
115?
No problem, paid all day long. Typically 150.
Okay.
So anything gets over 150, you get a little.
175.
I'm gonna give you 120, I'm gonna give you 150. That's usually our max. It just depends, If it's out, 20 miles from town, okay, we're gonna have to adjust that a little bit. So they're usually pretty good. They'll work with you. But here again, labor. Last time I was at Rinnai, which was 2 years ago. Less than 2% of all warranty labors was ever submitted. It'd be a nice fat paycheck for Rinnai, but for us, it costs us money. So it's real simple to do now. It's all online, very simple to do. So if you got any questions on how to submit labor requests, let me know. Because it's very important that get done. Which, by the way, has made me look fantastic because the number of units sold and the warranty problems we've had out here in Montana is about 1/10 of everybody else in the US. So I don't know whether we don't report it or we get it fixed in the field or whatever it is, but Yeah, it's pretty phenomenal that we got called out on that. What do we do and how do we do it? Economy mode, it's available on that. So what it basically does is keeps, when it's not in the economy mode, it keeps that primary heat exchanger warm. That's a big thing, because by the time you heat that 1.5 gallons of water inside this heat exchanger to heat this primary, or this heat exchanger, it takes a little while. If you got a warm heat exchanger, then we can heat that up fairly quickly. So that's what the economy doesn't do. The economy, when you turn it on, it keeps a cold heat exchanger, so on demand. So it'll take a minute or two to get it caught up, get that heat exchanger warmed up, and get that thing. So what you want to do is you probably want to leave it off economy, you know, unless somebody's really concerned about gas consumption or really wants to know, you know, how much fuel I'm in. So that would be the only time that you'd want to use that economy feature.
How many cycles an hour does it take to keep that warmed up, do you know?
I have no idea. I can find out for you though. So because of the cabinet, the face of it insulated and the way this heat exchanger is built, I would imagine probably once an hour. But again, it's just based on the discharge thermistor in here, and it's looking at that temperature, that heat exchanger, and if it gets too, and it's not in the economy, it's going to cycle that burner. And I know the cycle on the burner is less than about 20 seconds to bring that heat exchanger up.
If you have the timer connected, does it still cycle the burner? When
Yeah.
the timer's in the off mode?
When the timer's in the off mode, yeah, so it's still maintaining this heat exchanger. That's what we're doing. We're still trying to maintain this heat exchanger. Now, if you put it in the economy mode, then no, it's not on. Okay, installation. Again, we're coming with the greatest thing I think they ever came up with, and that's the mounting bracket. So you can hang it on the wall and lift the unit up, put it on there. That's, to me, is fantastic. The way that we used to do it is, you know, try a screw and then try to find a stud. And not now. And actually, the holes in this thing, even though this is made in Japan, are 16-inch uncenter mounting bolts. So they were smart about that. Some of the mini split people weren't. So we're going to come again with the LP kit with this thing. Comes in the kit. It's going to come with an outer gasket, an inner gasket, and then of course your orifice assembly, which is a plastic orifice assembly, a pressure relief valve, your standard boiler pressure relief valve, outdoor sensor that somehow or another walked on my last class, so I don't have one, but there is an outdoor sensor if you choose to use it. And then it's going to come with a domestic water. So then we talked about the domestic water. It's going to come with a plug. So if you want to add additional control, it's going to come with a plug so you can plug into the board. Then of course the wall mounting bracket. Again, venting, 2-inch PVC up to 65 feet. Now that's equivalent footage. You got to deduct for 45s and 90s, but on 3-inch, 150 feet. That's pretty phenomenal. And again, we could use just about any kind of one that you want. If you want to use stainless, if you want to use, you know, if there's existing stainless, if there's existing polypro or polypipe, we can use it. We're pretty forgiving. Like I said, we've got 9 different manufacturers that we can use. So again, just mounting it, make sure that we've got clearances on the top so we can at least get our connection points. And then after you use that, still go ahead and anchor this to the wall. Seismic problems, that kind of things. We want to make sure that this is anchored to the wall, because otherwise you're just sitting there holding it on that and then on the piping. So we want to make sure that you go ahead and once you get that mounting bracket, there are screw holes up here to mount that directly to the wall. So what type of venting do we want to use? Again, we can do one pipe and use room air. If you have enough combustion air, run into a couple of those, and that was our big failure with the RH180s, if anybody's familiar with those. That was our biggest problem, is they were put in rooms that had no combustion air. Taking out O2 sensors. But we can do 2-inch or 3-inch PVC, CPVC. Again, stainless. The newest thing that came out was the Polyflex liner. So in other words, we can take an existing flue chimney, long as it's dedicated to that appliance, and snake up flexible. And that'd be stainless, it could just be poly. So we can run up the existing chimney and cap it at the top and the bottom. And we've actually got a real nice finish cap that goes over the top of the existing flue pipe, and that connects right in, so.
Have you been around an installation where you're using the room air? What kind of decibel difference is there between, piping out the fresh air or using
I would.
a lot of those pieces of equipment?
Yeah, I would.
Much noisier when you take.
It's not much, but it is noise. The big thing we want you to do is to put an elbow on this. That helps considerably. If you use just this and put the screen in the top, yeah, it's pretty noisy. But if we use the elbow, it seems to reduce it a little bit. And that's what we recommend is an elbow on the combustion air side. So anyway, and we can always use a concentric. To me, I think concentric's wonderful stuff, and it's really, really come down in price. And plus the fact that we not only have 3x5, we've gone now with 2x4. So that's even considerably cheaper. So we've got different venting options for you, however you want to do it. At this point, I know this is the same thing in the sense that we have the same check valve, the same turbo. We can't common vent these. We are in testing procedure right now to get that approved. Once that's approved, then we'll be able to common vent these. As far as cascading these out of our controller, I'm going to recommend Techmark to be able to bring on different stages. So currently not common vented, and we can't cascade it. At this point, that's coming soon. And it will be for existing inventory. So here's our information as far as venting goes. Again, everything's in that installation manual. But you can see the PVC is going to be your number one, and 65 feet equivalent. Remember, each elbow's worth 6, 45's worth 3. So just add those all up, see what you're going to be. We've run into a few situations where we've exceeded that 65 feet on 2-inch, and it does work. And again, remember, that's one direction. That's not adding both pipes together, combustion and exhaust. That is one length. So if you have one length that's 30 feet and one length that's 40 feet, the 40 feet is what you want to use. We don't care what goes on. The other thing about these units are we can take the combustion air from a different static zone. So in other words, if we're going to vent out the roof and we want to get our combustion air from the sidewall, no problem. Either one, we don't care. We're pretty flexible as far as that goes. Just about have it. Here's our different ones. Of course, we can recommend the what I call the bazooka, the concentric PVC. The only thing you got in consideration when you're using one of these is that piece of pipe there, that fitting there, is equivalent to 21 feet of venting. So why is that? Because if you look at theirs, a 2-inch is only 1.5 inches exhaust. The 3-inch is only 2.5. So yeah, it's equivalent to 21 feet of actual pipe. So you got to take that into consideration. Bay vents are approved. The snorkel kits are approved. And again, there's all the different manufacturers that we can use for our venting terminations. Different things we can do straight out, 45 out, however you want to do it. There's your 2-pipe. You notice on the 2-pipe, we can either use the downturn or we can use the T. So far, we're seeing the T is a little bit more reliable. We're finding that the double 90 or the gooseneck sometimes has an issue with recirculating some of the combustion air. So you just got to be careful. Again, like I explained, we can do, just doesn't work. 2 different static zones, exhaust off the roof, intake off the sidewall. Here's your bay vent. Everybody knows how to put those in. Just be a little cautious of those. So these bay vents are made for what? Furnaces. What's the largest 90+ furnace you can buy? 135,000? This expired at 199,000. So you gotta be careful about how you do that. If you get some long vent runs or anything like that, just be aware of that termination. Haven't had any issues other than when you do the 3-inch, you got a long run, you have a lot of problem with hoarfrost building up on the intake. And I think you experienced that with furnaces too. So. Just non-direct and room air, again, just depends on how you're gonna do it, we don't really care. But again, the T on the very right hand is the one that we've had the most success with so far. There's that flex liner I talked about. You can see we've got a termination kit, so we've got a starting piece here, and then we've got a termination for the roof. That fits down right over the vent pipe. So there's another way of doing that. It's pretty cool. We've done it a couple times here in Billings, and it's been pretty successful, except for the one in Great Falls. He run it up an existing vent pipe, but still left his furnace hooked up to it. That poly pipe didn't last very long. It's gotta be a dedicated vent. And it has to be chased. That's the other thing too. A lot of guys say, well, I got that flex line, I'm just gonna run it through the wall. No, it's gotta be chased in some kind of metal pipe. So whether it's single wall or an existing B vent, it has to be chased. You can't just have it hanging out there in the air. It's gotta be chased through metal. The bottom connections, you're gonna see that. The boiler, the heating side is 1 inch. The condensate drain is 1/2 inch. And again, warning on the condensate drains. On these, it's a 1/2 inch male pipe fitting, but it has to be air gapped. Because if you don't air gap it, you're gonna have trouble with that trap in here. Hydraulic things lock up. So what you wanna do is air gap that. So a couple different options is come out of that 1/2 inch, do a 3/4 by 1 inch bell, stick it up underneath, or come up with 1/2 inch and do a T riser above the condensate trap. Either way, whichever way works best for you. So just make sure that condensate here is air gapped at the unit, not down at the floor drain. Gas 3/4 inch male pipe, here's another thing. In the past, we've always been real saying that, hey, we can't have more than 3/10 of an inch water column out on natural, 0.5 on LP. This unit here on natural gas, minimum fire rate is 3.5 inches. I don't care what you do, as long as you give me 3.5 inches, I can fire this unit. Fire it and run it. 8 inches on LP. So it's a lot more forgiving, and that's again, because of the variable venturi and the gas valve setup. We can compensate for that. So if you get a run that you're gonna replace an existing boiler that only has 1/2 inch to it, yeah, it's probably gonna work for you. As long as it's probably less than 40 feet of 1/2 inch, but yeah, you got 7 inches coming into it on natural. And then of course your DW is 3/4, and again, we recommend that you use the service valve kit because these are like any other water heaters, is the fact that they could need to be flushed once in a while. Now, here's a big thing about using a brazed plate heat exchanger for the domestic water. Rather than direct firing that fire right on that tube for the domestic water, like you do in the standard Rinnai or Sensei, we're actually superheating that water. So we're running, 1,800 degrees that's hitting that water. So we have a trouble with that trying to peel off some of the calcium that's in there and stick to the sidewall. Well, with this, we're using the intermediate. We're using hot water to heat that plate heat exchanger. So we're not gonna see the fouling that we've seen in the past. It is so much more forgiving. So that's not gonna be a big issue. Yeah, you're still gonna have to filter it. You're still gonna have to, may have to clean it. But again, probably not gonna see a big issue with these because of that medium. Because we're using water to heat that. We're not gonna superheat that water and try to get it up to temperature. Now, primary, secondary loop. We definitely have to use primary, secondary loop. In the beginning, we came out and we said, okay, we don't really need to do that as long as you use closely spaced tees. Well, I guess closely spaced tees to some contractors is different than others. So finally, we just said, okay, we're done with this. We need to have you put in some kind of low loss header. You can use ours, or there's a lot of other manufacturers out there. Do you guys talk anything else? Like Cliffy's or any of those guys?
No.
Okay. Well, then we make one, and which is been a real nice thing. They're very nice. That is the solo one, because the solo one unit does not come with a pump. So you'll have to field supply a pump for the solo. The combi has the pump built into it. So you can see there, and Brett, you asked about that. Yeah, here's your shut-off valves and there's your surface valves. So we can still get in here and do what we need to do, whether we need to flush this heat exchanger, which on the boiler side, unless you got a really dirty system, I don't think it's, a big problem. So
what pump are we using for our solar boilers and
I'll show you. There's a chart that we use.
it's coming?
Yep, it's coming. This is a typical setup right here that you're gonna see. Here's a big thing that we really wanna see on these, is some kind of dirt trap. A Y strainer is probably not the best application. I'm echoing. Sure glad we got a computer guy here. Put it on the webinar now. Oh, by the way, signed autographs will be $10 after the class if you want them, so. Oh, too far, I think.
We'll get in the right spot. You want features?
Just leave it there, I'll go back.
Okay.
Okay. I don't have control. Let me turn this off, turn it back on again. No, something happened. Let me see. No, it's like it's locked. Gotta love technology, right? There it goes. Hey, let me run this real quick again. Sorry. Standard system here, you can see, again, when you got a one zone system, you got your TT terminals down here, and then you got your pump terminals on the outside here for like a solo boiler. So we can do that on a single zone. If we're gonna do outdoor reset and low water cutoff, which we have to do on commercial jobs, this is a piping diagram for that, and it's in the installation instructions, so it's pretty straightforward. And you can see there we've got T1, T2, and then 2 pumps. We actually have a 2 amp output pump circuit for T1 and T2, which should handle anything we need. Oops. Okay, this gets a little more complicated when we get into our tank setup. And then you can see here we can either use the sensor or we can do a 10K, however we want to do that. But you can see that off of the second pump, that's where the indirect pump would come off on. On a stage 2 we'll normally use, we'd come off of that for that. And if we had more than multiple stages on this particular application, then we would use a take-home at a zone, or whatever you call it. So that's basically what you've got to do. Low water cutoff, if you've got a low water cutoff put on this thing, we've got a jumper already set up for that. Solos for the 10K is right there, or the Aquastat located on the terminal board. Outdoor reset, again, your option. You want to use it? Don't you want to use it? It's up to you. And then, of course, I got to take this off. 24-volt external output. Do not use that for anything. Because what happens is if you overuse it, it's not fused, it takes out the transformer. When it takes out the transformer, it takes out the whole control circuit of this thing. So the only reason why I put it in there is for if you're going to use that timer. That's for the 24-volt. But you can't run a thermostat off of that. My biggest thing is, matter of fact, that's where this boiler came from. He hooked it up 3 times, 3 different transformers, and we've come to find out he had his own valve. to the 24 volts. No, can't do it. It's only got 0.7 amps, and they draw a lot more than that. Here's your pump sizing. So anywhere from a 42 to a 99. Again, this is only on the solo boilers. So that's what you need for pumps. And we give you different options. Of course, the one we rep, it's not on there, but it's okay. So you can
Did
see.
you already buy a drawing for the solo with an indirect on where you're tying in?
Yeah.
Does that low loss header come with the terminals?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
See right here,
There's that. Okay.
see right here?
Yep.
There and there.
Okay.
Yeah, we fought, and finally they go, oh, great idea. So that way we get the full flow rate out of it.
Yeah.
Rather than going through the low loss header interseating with the central heating, now we've got just a dedicated set of points on there. So yes, we can certainly do that. Setup service, flue gas analysis. It used to be a big thing, and I think almost every boiler manufacturer has that. But we really have no way of adjusting gas pressure. It is what it is. So only if the local code guy tells us that we need to have some kind of combustion analysis will we do that. But typically, no, we're not gonna have to do that because this is a self-regulating. It understands what's going on in the system, so it will cut back on the gas or cut back on the air or increase the air as needed. So we don't have to do a combustion analysis. Now, if you want to do that, you can do a 2x2 D with a 1/2 inch side port on it, and that way you get your combustion analysis. But again, I don't even know what the O2 and CO settings are because I've never had anybody ask me. All the boilers we've sold, nobody's asked me yet, so I'll get that information. But I don't have that. That PVC venting system I told you about, if we're gonna use PVC and we're gonna use high temp, we gotta warn the unit that it's going to possibly exceed the 159 degrees that PVC is rated for. So we will duty cycle that burner through this thermostat. If we're gonna use poly or stainless, we can disable that so it doesn't duty cycle that.
Have you been on an application where they've PVC'd in a high temp situation? I mean, how often is that duty cycle?
Absolutely. I don't know, I've never timed it, but I found that it does work.
Right, but I'm saying if it's 20 below, we got a major heat call. I mean, how often are we duty cycling or shutting down?
Just depends on the return temperature coming back. In-floor heat, not very often at all, but you're not gonna run high temperature.
No.
And that's the only one I've really been on, to tell you the truth. I haven't been on a baseboard that does that yet. So I can't tell you that.
Good.
But I can certainly find that information out. I can ask them. I don't know if they've got any studies on that, but I can certainly ask them. But again, we've got the capability of doing PVC, or we can, if we're gonna go with high temperature system, we can eliminate that sensor. Altitude. Oh yeah, we're back to dip switches. Remember the sensing before? No, we didn't have any dip switch. Everything was done on the control board. Well, we actually do have some dip switches in here that have to be adjusted. Just couldn't get it all crammed into this little board. So yes, we have dip switches. Same thing as what we've seen in the past from the Rinnai. So you know, for our 2000 to 5400, 6 on, 7 off. Notice we can go all the way up to 10,200 feet. That's our elevation range.
Where are the dip switches at on there? Just under the cover?
Under the cover, right there. So they're easy to get to. Again, they're small and you need a pin or something to, I know I can't.
They're not on the side at least, or?
No, it's not on the side. Everything's right in the front, so you can see it. Along with, there's some push buttons here too that also actually get access. Yeah. Now, if you want to do, again, that domestic, simultaneously, there's a dip switch that we need to tell it either it's going to be priority to domestic hot water or it's going to be simultaneous. Gotta tell it. Okay, here's your different solo models. If we're going to use the different setup for our tanks, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to tell it that it's going to have an indirect tank on it. So we have to change 3 and 4 so that we know that T2 is actually going to be the call for the indirect tank. And then that will run that pump off of zone 2. Up here. So it's pretty, again, we're getting a little bit of the weeds here because it's not gonna be done every day, but just so you know that we can do it. We can do simultaneous, we can do, you know, domestic priority, whatever you want us to do, we can do. You just need to tell us what you want to do, and we'll give you a plan on how to attack that. Okay, so to access the parameters, what we need to do is we need to access the parameters, and what we're going to do is there's a little red button in here. That's the go-to button. We're going to hit that red button and then hit the mode button, and that'll send us into a parameter setting. And in your handouts here, it gives you all the parameters that we can do. And it is lengthy. There's a lot of things we can do with this thing. But again, this is a custom setup. So if you want to go in and really fine tune this thing and make it yours, you can do it. If you don't, okay, just walk away, leave it alone. Many times we've seen that. So what you're going to see here with the dip switch settings, here's your different dip switch settings that you're going to see. Pretty straightforward. There's your parameters. Now this parameters, when you get into that red button in the mode, get into parameters, and then you can set it up however you want to do that. So parameter 10, default is 120, but if you want to change that to 140, you can change that. You want to go to 140, you can. You want to do 135, or if you want to go to 110, you can do that by changing that parameter 10. And then, of course, whether you have a dedicated or crossover return, this goes on and on and on and on. Here's the important one here, this AO, that's type of gas. It's going to come up set up for natural. You want it to go to LP, then you'll have to go into tele. And you convert it to LP. Again, there's the A2, that's your material venting switch. This is kind of cool here. We'll talk a little bit about it, but we actually have a boost when we're doing simultaneous heating and cooling. So if you run in that situation where it's 20 below, and we want to, make sure that we can boost that temperature, go to the central heating, we can do that. And that's after 30 minutes or 60 minutes of runtime. And we'll boost that temperature up to the maximum set point of the curve, if you do outdoor reset, or the max temperature that you set on a.
So there's an actual set point, and there's a max set point in there?
Yeah.
In the setting?
Well, there is an outdoor reset curve that has min-max, and then there is a custom curve that you can set your own without reset. So outdoor reset, whether you use it or not, of course, it's we recommend it. Matter of fact, in the past, we've not allowed you to not use it, but we found a lot of problems with it. So now we give you the option, whether you want to use it or not. And there are situations where, you get into some people, older folks, that like to have it, it's 70 degrees outside, but they want it 80 in the house. Well, this thing shuts off, so we don't want that. So we're capable of bypassing that and be able to turn that on. Again, doesn't have to do domestic water, just central heating. Man. So this is basically what outdoor temperature is, or your reset control is. So high is 180, low is 104. We just changed that, and I believe the new boilers are coming in for you, Brett, will be 98.
You can't set your own parameters?
Yeah.
Oh, you can, okay.
There's a custom one that you can set.
Okay.
If you're using the outdoor reset. If you're not using the outdoor reset, you set it 140, it's 140 all day long. So it just depends on how you want to do it. So yeah, we just went down to 98. I guess there's some hydronic guys out there that want it colder than 104. So now we'll go down to 98. Or somebody in for heat jobs. So why do we want to use outdoor reset? And because, with an outdoor reset, you got a Ferrari. I mean, you got this thing that's going to do, it's going to modulate, it's going to give them all kinds of comfort and so on. If you don't use it, it's basically have that Ferrari without wheels. Looks pretty, but just doesn't have much performance. So here's your curves. And again, default is baseboard, which is 140 up to 180. Curve 2 is your staple up. Zone 3 is undersized baseboard, so we gotta run a little bit higher temperature. So you can see we can get, instead of 120, we can kick it up to 140. Just depends if we don't have enough baseboard in the house. Or emitters of some sort, radiators, whatever. And then of course, number 4 is custom. So we can change that, what we want it to do. Here's your custom curve, anywhere from, again, 98 now instead of 104, up to 180. So we can set that curve however you want to do it. If you got an air handler, you know, maybe we want to set that at 120 minimum temperature and 180 at max, or maybe 140 at max. You got an air handler that you're running, rather than any kind of baseboard. So to get it, we can fine tune that to whatever you want. But if you don't use it, whatever you set the central heating at, that's what it's gonna be, period, all the time. No reset. This just shows you the different slopes that you'll have with that. So talk a little bit about return water temperature. If you got a 180 and you're coming back at 160, what happens to efficiency in your boiler? Goes down, big time. So here's just kind of an example. Well, there was an example. Oh, okay. The example is basically if you have anything below 130, you're going to be in the high efficiency, the 96 to 97. 130 to 140, now you're starting to drift. You're going to get into 90%. Anything above 140, you're talking 8. So when you get in high temperature, high efficiency units, not going to get it. But low temperature units, you're going to get it. So if you have enough baseboard, you can run it at 140, you're still going to get a good 90% at least. So the higher the return water temperature, the lower the efficiency. And of course, we make, we're also the Modine rep, we make unit heaters for an application for low temp. So if you want to do 140, we can give you unit heaters that will perform at that 140. So we've got that capability of doing that. I think up to 300-some thousand, which should be multiple of these units. Talked about that boost temperature. So what happens is if we take parameter 2 and say, hey, we want the boost feature on, then whether it's 30 or 60 seconds, what we can do is in 30 seconds, it'll take it to the top temperature of that curve. So if it's run along for 30 seconds at 140 and it can't achieve satisfaction in 30 minutes, it will then pump it right up to the 180. So that's a possibility. You talked about what happens with this duty cycling. That's what you would do to overcome that. Maintenance. We're able to go in and look and see what's going on in this system. You know, it's just all not smoke and mirrors. We can actually see how this system is performing. We can look at the pressure that's on this system. We can look at the domestic flow rate, supply temperature, return temperature, exhaust temperature. All of this is available through accessing the maintenance board on this. And that's pretty simple to do. You push the down arrow and simultaneously hit the domestic hot water, and it'll put you into that. And it'll go 1 through 42. This is pretty neat to tell you how many hours those things run. That's a big thing. Especially for those that don't do hour reset, we can see that, you know, this unit's run a lot longer than it really needs to run. Maintenance. Maintenance of these things, basically, look at the unit, verify gas pressure, make sure the venting is good, it hasn't deteriorated because of the high temperature, and the system pressure. That's it. That's all we gotta do. There's nothing in there that we have to go in and change the flame sensor. We have to adjust O2. There's nothing that we really have to do. Of course, we want to clean the condensate trap. That's pretty important because there's a lot of gunk that comes out of that. So to make sure that's clean, so just flush that. It's pretty easy to do, just pull the pipe off, flush it with water. That's basically about Look at the flame on the inside, which we actually do have a port, so you can see what the flame looks like, right there. So if you look at that flame, make sure it's nice and blue, not too yellow. Then if you want, you can push the on-off button, the domestic water on-off button, and the down arrow, and that'll give you all the fault codes that have been in the past. So you know what's going on. So that way you understand, you know, where we're at. Of course, we want to make sure on the domestic side that we still have our water filter, just like we've had in the past, a water filter down there, so we need to pull that out and make sure that's clean. A lot of times you get calls and that's done. Here's a great big thing, and then some of you guys in a sense they know about this already. Built-in bug screen. No more bugs getting into the burner, no more bugs getting into the unit. It's a pretty big thing. Matter of fact, I just spent 2 hours out with a contractor yesterday, tearing apart a Rinnai because it was full of bugs. 15 years old, nobody's ever cleaned it, and it was packed. I don't know how it ran. So, but yeah, we've got a built-in bug screen, so pull that out and clean it. And the other thing about that I run into when you do clean these, if you do have debris in here, you still have this plenum up here. So either take that piece of pipe off, blow it out, or run a vacuum down here and here to help try to get any loose stuff out of there. That's the only thing I've found. Sometimes millers will get in there, you know, they'll be in here, but they're still loose and stuff. So that's the maintenance. That's it. Now, if you do get a line code, it's the LC, it'll come up on the display as a fault code, which means you've got a error with the heat exchanger being partially restricted, or you're getting a fouling heat exchanger on the domestic water side. You need to clean it. You will do just like you did before. Use vinegar, 4 gallons of vinegar, let it run for 45 minutes, shut it off, flush it, and you're done.
How is it sensing that? Of the temperature?
Yeah, temperature, right. Yeah. If we start spiking on the outlet temperature on that thing, so in other words, you know, we're not getting the temperature, so the firing rates keep going up and up and up, and this doesn't, that's what we want. So we actually will have that. Better than what the Rinnai does now. The Senseis gives you a code 55, which means SS service soon. So at least we did that. So here's your fault codes. And this is just a fraction of what there's out there. We look at everything in the system to find out what's going on. Condensate pump, it stripped the safety switch. We actually have the ability, if you need to hook a condensate, you don't have a condensate drain, and you want to hook it up to a pump, we actually have a thing in here so that it will give you a fault code. The condensate pump's not working. So just tie it into the system. Low water, 430, low water cutoff, or high water. We've seen some high water ones where the inlet pressure reducing valve has failed. So you just got to look at those things. Exhaust temperature. I mean, there's so many things that I didn't want to go through them all, but here's just a sample of them. They go all the way up to 730. And 700 is one you don't want to see. That's a board failure. So setup, basically, nothing happens. What you're going to want to look for, again, we're using the same technology we're using in our Sensei. So reacts to flow. So if we're not seeing flow, then there's something wrong with the flow valve here. The flow rater that's inside there might be stuck. The screen might be plugged. There are a number of things that can happen. If you get no domestic water and you got a faucet on, then and it shows 0 GPM, then we can access that to find out what the GPM going through the domestic water side is. And if it's showing 0, we need to get in there and inspect. We need to look at that flow rate. We need to look at that screen. First thing you want to look at is the screen. And then, of course, decreased flow. All of these scenarios here, if you have no diagnostic codes, there's something that we're not seeing, and what we're not seeing is flow. That's the biggest thing that we're not seeing. So whether there's something wrong with the pump, something wrong with the external pump on the solo, a number of things could be the problem. So there's some of the things you got to do, because you won't see any display here. It'll just say, okay, I'm ready. Well, it's ready for a call. We got to make sure we get that call. Again, there's some situations where you don't have correctly, you wanna make sure your dip switches are set correctly. Outdoor reset, does not affect the supply water temperature for the domestic water site, so don't worry about that. That's really about that is it. Oops, sorry. There we go. Change the remotes. And again, partner with Rinnai, we have a pro network available to you guys. What I want you to do before you leave, if you would sign up for me. And there's some of you, I think Star and Cornerstone are already pros. I think they already signed in.
You said we could derate, right? Is that in the general settings or where is that?
Derate.
Derate the heat side?
You mean temperature?
Temperature?
Just the temperature?
Just temperature. is that
Yeah, just
it?
temperature.
You don't have to derate the boiler?
No, Beaver's put it on.
Like if say we want all the DHW we can possibly have, but we only need 70,000 on the heat side, and we need to do it 120.
Right.
You're okay with that?
Yeah,
We're having overfire?
no, it'll compensate for that.
Okay.
It will compensate for that.
Okay.
I've run that many times. Where I run into it is this, not this time. It's not my problem. But when you get the 50-degree mark, you know, sometimes we're firing 199,000 BTUs for the domestic side, but yet we only need 10,000 BTU or 15,000 BTUs for the heating side. It will compensate for that. The three-way mixing valve will compensate for that. There's a three-way mixing valve that mixes that water temperature. So that's built into the system.
Does this unit start from the bottom and go up?
Yep,
Fire deck? Okay.
Starts on low fire.
All right.
So anyway, sign that up for me if you would, please, and get that back. Here is the 800 number. The one you really want to do is 800 746-6247. That's their tech support. We got some pretty good guys there. There you go. Just depends on how you want to do it. I'm usually the first line of defense. If I can't fix it, then I'll go to somebody that I know can fix it. So if you got any questions, I got cards if anybody needs a card. But yeah, that's the service part, and we are open 24/7, 365. So you can call on Thanksgiving morning and somebody will call you back. If you call me, yeah, maybe. That's what the turkey's at.
I know you didn't put your cell phone up there.
No, I did not put my cell phone in. I have a card though, I'll hand a card out.
Brent, Randy Pulse, and then tech support.
There you go. Yeah, you really, you know, if you do have an issue, get hold of Brent, somebody in Northwest Pine. And then if they can't, they're really good about calling me. So that's fine. And I do answer my phone Saturdays and Sundays.
Yeah, that number.
Not speedily. So the takeaway on this I-Series boiler, that I'm gonna get rid of this remote in the garbage as soon as we get done here. More efficient, simpler to install and maintain. That's a big thing about it. That's what we tried to do. What we did when we initially brought this out is we had contractors come in, down south contractors, and said, what do you think? And of course, what do they want to do? I want to put one in my house. And they all came back with a positive thumbs up. They liked it, easy to install, easy to set up, easy to service. That's what they all liked about it. So we actually did do that. We just didn't make this and go, okay, guys, make it work. And that's usually what happens, isn't it? New heat exchanger design because of the stainless steel and the brace plate heat exchanger for the secondary. That's a big thing. And then, of course, the brace plate heat exchanger for the domestic water if you used a commie. That's another big thing because for fouling, you know, for hard water areas, probably not going to be as critical as we've seen in the past. Two-zone capability, onboard domestic hot water recirculation. That's a big thing right now. We're seeing a lot of people wanting that. They get spoiled. They go to the hotel, they turn on, they got hot water, right? They want that for their house. Up to 7.5 GPM on the domestic hot water side. Well, yeah, if it's only got a 40-degree rise, not for us, 5.2. No combustion analysis on commissioning. You know, no $1,000 meter to set this up. It's pretty straightforward. You don't have to adjust anything. Easy to service and install. Again, everything in this thing, you know, 10 to 15 minutes. Even the flow valve in here is right here located off the pump. I mean, it's 2 speed clips and it's out. That's how simple it is. And again, warranties, best in the industry, 24/7 tech support. The next step for you guys in this thing, and we'll probably do that this fall or maybe this winter, is we'll actually do a teardown. So what we'll do is we'll bring these units in, set them on the table, and you guys get to tear them down. Because how many's been to a teardown class here before? Yeah, we're gonna do the same thing, but with a boiler. The fun thing is you have to put it back together and it has to work.
I think we're pretty much due for a Sensei teardown.
Oh, yeah,
Has
absolutely.
anybody done a Sensei one yet? You have?
Yeah.
Yeah. I gotta get that scheduled.
It's been real tough. I'm sorry.
We'll have the quick clips, like the
The
boiler.
Sensei? Yes, it does, absolutely. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, it's because of the COVID thing. I mean, it's been crazy. I tried to do one in Missoula, and I had to hire a nurse full-time during the class, because they had to check temperatures. The guys going in, guys going out. They had to clean the toilets after every time somebody used it. I had it made 6 feet apart. I could only have 1 machine per person, and I had to clean that machine before the next class.
I got it
That
scheduled.
was in Missouri.
I canceled.
I would have too. We don't have that issue here.
Okay.
We're not Missoula.
So yeah, I'd be happy to come back and do a teardown class on the Senseis at your convenience. I've got 5 water heaters, I can do that. Hopefully sometime not this summer. I'm pretty well booked to the end of August.
Good.
All right, so guys, any questions? What do you guys think of this? Think it's got some merit? I mean, over the competition, I feel we got to be hands down.
That's the thing with the other combis is that you lose your domestic flow rate with it and you can't keep up with the showers or whatever that people have.
Because,
You can do both.
because the mixing
So
valve
that's
is, yep.
neat that it can still keep the same as the Sensei.
Yep, same as the Sensei, same control setup. Different controls, but same setup. Yeah, we're really happy with this. We've got, we just did a little project here in town, they had 32 of them go in and not one hiccup. So, this one here came back, fought it, kept burning transformers out, and finally when I went out to the job site, sure as shit, here's a guy got a zone valve and a thermostat hanging on the wall, wired to that 24 volts. Popped it every time. So.
You said that takes the board out?
What's that?
That takes the board
No,
out?
it just disables the power to the board, doesn't take the board out. Huge thing is the gas pressure. You know, 3.5 inches on natural minimum, 8 inches LP. So smaller gas lines, possible.
It's possible, so like that's the big claim to fame for the Navians.
Yep, we're the same.
They're 1/2 inch.
Yeah, well, 1/2 inch up to so many feet.
Right.
But yeah, and as long as you have 7 or 8 inches of water column coming in, you know, I've run in a couple of places where Northwest Energy won't give us more than 5. Now I've got problems, you know, with 1/2 inch line. So. Anyway, that's really pretty much it in a nutshell, other than this is gonna go in the garbage. Any more questions?
Thanks, Randy.
Anybody need a card?